There comes a point in life where motivation is no longer enough, where inspiration fades and excuses begin to rot your future from the inside. That moment is when you realize something uncomfortable but necessary. No one is coming to save you. Your habits are shaping your destiny. Your discipline is writing your future, and your neglect is quietly destroying your potential. Growth is not optional. It is a demand placed on you by life itself. And if you are not obsessed with becoming better, stronger, sharper, and more responsible, then you are unconsciously agreeing to remain exactly where you are. Today is not about feeling good. It is about waking up. Growth is not optional. It is a moral responsibility. Growth is not something reserved for the ambitious, the gifted, or the unusually disciplined. It is a fundamental responsibility placed on every individual who wishes to live a meaningful life. The idea that you can remain stagnant without consequence is one of the most dangerous lies modern comfort has sold to humanity. Life does not reward neutrality. If you are not actively improving, refining, and strengthening yourself, then you are silently decaying. This is not a moral judgment imposed by society. It is a biological, psychological, and existential fact. Every system left unattended deteriorates, and the human being is no exception. To refuse growth is not merely to harm yourself, it is to fail the responsibilities that come with being alive. When you choose not to grow, you do not remain harmlessly still. You become a liability to your family, to your community, and eventually to yourself. Untapped potential does not stay neutral. It transforms into resentment, bitterness, and blame. People who refuse responsibility often grow angry at the world for not rewarding them, even though they never paid the price required for competence. That anger then spreads outward. It manifests in broken relationships, poor work ethic, moral shortcuts, and quiet sabotage of others' success. A person who refuses growth does not simply stagnate. They poison the environment around them without even realizing it. Growth begins with the recognition that your life matters, and therefore how you live it matters. Meaning is not something you discover lying around waiting to be found. It is something you construct through effort, responsibility, and deliberate self-improvement. The world does not need more comfort-seeking individuals who avoid difficulty at all costs. It needs people who are willing to shoulder weight, to develop strength, and to become capable enough to confront chaos without collapsing. When you grow, you increase your capacity to handle suffering. When you refuse to grow, even small problems feel overwhelming and life becomes unbearable. There is a profound moral dimension to self-improvement that is often ignored. If you have the ability to become stronger, wiser, more disciplined, and more truthful, and you choose not to, then you are withholding something valuable from the world. Competence is not arrogance, it is generosity. A capable person can help without resenting it. A disciplined person can give without feeling exploited. A grounded person can stand firm in times of crisis. Growth equips you to be useful, and usefulness is one of the deepest sources of human dignity. Many people resist growth because it requires confrontation with their own inadequacies. It demands honesty, and honesty is painful. You must look directly at the areas where you have been careless, lazy, cowardly, or dishonest. You must accept that your current situation, however, unfair it feels, is at least partially shaped by your own choices. This is not meant to crush you, it is meant to empower you. Because the moment responsibility is accepted, power is reclaimed. If your actions contributed to your downfall, then different actions can contribute to your rise. Growth also requires sacrifice. You cannot become better while clinging to every comfort that made you weak. Something must be given up. Time-wasting habits, shallow validation, excuses, and often the approval of people who prefer you small because your growth threatens their stagnation. This is why growth feels lonely at times. You outgrow environments, conversations, and even identities that once felt familiar. But that discomfort is not a sign of failure, it is evidence of transformation. You cannot climb upward without leaving lower ground behind. To grow is to accept that suffering is unavoidable, but pointless suffering is optional. When you avoid responsibility, life punishes you with chaos, anxiety, and regret. When you voluntarily accept responsibility, life still challenges you, but now the pain has meaning. Meaningful suffering strengthens rather than destroys. It sharpens character. builds resilience, and provides a reason to endure hardship without becoming bitter. This is why disciplined people often appear calmer under pressure. They have trained themselves to carry weight without collapsing. The refusal to grow often hides behind modern language that sounds compassionate but is deeply destructive. Phrases like "just be yourself" or "you don't owe anyone anything" are comforting but incomplete. You are not a finished product. You are a work in progress. To remain exactly as you are is not authenticity, it is negligence. You owe it to yourself to become someone you respect, and you owe it to others not to make your unaddressed weaknesses their burden to carry. Growth is also the antidote to nihilism. When people claim that life has no meaning, what they often mean is that they have not taken responsibility for creating any. Aimlessness breeds despair. But the moment you adopt an aim, however small, and move toward it with discipline, life begins to organize itself around that purpose. You wake up with direction. Your suffering becomes tolerable. Your actions start aligning with your values. Growth gives structure to chaos, and structure is what allows meaning to emerge. It is important to understand that growth does not mean perfection. It does not require brilliance or extraordinary talent. It requires consistency, humility, and courage. Small improvements practiced daily compound into massive transformation over time. The tragedy is not failing. The tragedy is refusing to try because failure might wound your pride. Pride that protects weakness is not dignity, it is self-betrayal. True dignity is earned by confronting what you are afraid to face and improving anyway. When you grow, you also become an example. You show others, especially those watching quietly, that responsibility is possible, that discipline works, and that change is real. You do not need to preach. Your actions speak louder than any words ever could. A well-ordered life is a silent argument against despair. It proves that meaning can be built, not begged for. To reject growth is ultimately to reject life itself, because life is movement, adaptation, and refinement. Everything alive grows or dies. There is no stable middle ground. If you are alive, you are called to improve, not to satisfy ego, but to fulfill potential. And potential unfulfilled does not simply disappear, it turns into regret. Few things are more painful than realizing too late that you could have been more and chose not to be. So growth is not optional. It is not a hobby, a phase, or a motivational trend. It is a moral responsibility. It is the obligation you owe to your future self, to the people who depend on you, and to the world that will feel the impact of your presence, whether you prepare for it or not. Choose growth not because it is easy, but because refusing it is far more costly. Choose growth because the alternative is a life slowly collapsing under the weight of what you refuse to become. Truth is the starting point of all transformation. Truth is not a motivational slogan, nor is it a comforting idea meant to make you feel better about your circumstances. Truth is sharp, inconvenient, and often humiliating, but it is also the only solid ground upon which real transformation can be built. Every genuine change in a human life begins the same way, with an honest confrontation with reality. Not the version of reality you wish were true, not the version that protects your ego, and not the version that allows you to avoid responsibility, but reality as it actually is. Without truth, effort is misdirected, discipline collapses, and growth becomes performative rather than real. Most people avoid truth not because they are evil, but because truth threatens the frag. Eily stories they tell themselves to survive. It exposes weakness, poor choices, wasted time, and unrealized potential. Lies, on the other hand, are comfortable. They allow you to blame circumstances, other people, bad luck, or the system. They allow you to feel morally justified while remaining personally stagnant. But every lie you tell yourself extracts interest over time. It does not disappear. It accumulates as anxiety, resentment, confusion, and quiet self-contempt. When your life feels heavy for no clear reason, it is often because truth has been ignored for too long. Transformation requires precision, and precision requires honesty. You cannot fix a problem you refuse to name. You cannot improve a weakness you pretend does not exist. And you cannot move forward if your internal map of reality is distorted. Truth aligns your perception with the world, and when perception is accurate, action becomes effective. This is why truth is not merely a moral virtue, it is a practical necessity. A person who tells the truth, especially to themselves, gains clarity, and clarity is power. Telling the truth to yourself means abandoning the fantasy that you are already good enough in every way that matters. It means recognizing that potential is not the same as achievement. Many people confuse the two, believing that because they could be great, they somehow are great. But unused potential is not an asset, it is a burden. It creates pressure, guilt, and eventually bitterness. Truth demands that you ask uncomfortable questions. How disciplined am I really? How much effort do I actually put in? How often do I choose comfort over responsibility? These questions sting, but they also illuminate the path forward. Truth also dismantles victimhood. This does not mean denying that injustice, hardship, and suffering exist. It means refusing to let those realities define the limits of your agency. When you tell the truth, you acknowledge what happened and how you responded. You accept that while you may not be responsible for the pain inflicted upon you, you are responsible for what you do next. This distinction is critical. Without it, people remain trapped in resentment, endlessly replaying the past while their future decays. Truth frees you from that loop by placing the focus where it belongs, on what you can control. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that your habits are more honest than your intentions. You may intend to change, to improve, to become disciplined, but what you repeatedly do reveals what you truly value. Truth strips away the illusion that good intentions are enough. It forces you to confront the gap between who you claim to be and how you actually live. That gap is painful to observe, but it is also where growth begins. You do not close that gap by pretending it does not exist. You close it through sustained, truthful action. Truth is also the antidote to self-deception disguised as positivity. Modern culture often encourages people to manifest, believe, or affirm without grounding those practices in reality. But belief without truth is delusion. Optimism that ignores facts is fragile and collapses at the first sign of resistance. Truth-based confidence, however, is unshakable because it is earned. When you know exactly where you stand, your strengths, your weaknesses, your limits, you stop being afraid of being exposed. There is nothing left to hide. To speak the truth is to voluntarily step into responsibility. Lies push responsibility outward, truth pulls it inward. This is why truth feels heavy, it carries weight. But that weight strengthens you over time. A person who tells the truth becomes someone others can rely on, someone whose words have substance, someone whose presence stabilizes rather than confuses. More importantly, they become someone they can respect in private. Self-respect is impossible without truth, because respect requires alignment between values and actions. Truth also organizes the chaos of life. When people live in lies, their thoughts contradict each other, their goals shift constantly, and their emotions feel uncontrollable. Truth brings order. It forces priorities to become clear. It reveals which relationships are built on honesty and which are sustained by pretense. It clarifies what must be done next, even if that next step is difficult or frightening. In this way, truth reduces anxiety not by eliminating problems, but by making problems solvable. There is also courage embedded in truth-telling. It takes bravery to admit you are wrong, weak, or behind, but that courage is rewarded with freedom. The moment you stop pretending, you stop wasting energy maintaining false identities. That energy becomes available for growth. You move faster, think clearer, and act with greater precision. Truth simplifies life. Not because it makes things easy, but because it removes unnecessary complications created by deception. Truth is not cruelty, or is it self-attack? It is alignment. It means seeing yourself accurately, neither inflating nor diminishing your worth. It means recognizing both your capacity for greatness and your tendency toward failure. This balanced self-view is what allows for sustainable improvement. People who only see their flaws become paralyzed. People who only see their strengths become arrogant. Truth integrates both and says, this is where I am, this is where I can go. Ultimately, truth is transformative because it connects you to reality, and reality always wins. You can negotiate with people, you can manipulate opinions, and you can delay consequences, but you cannot bargain with reality. The sooner you align with it, the less painful that alignment becomes. Truth may wound your pride, but it heals your life. It demands humility up front, but it rewards you with competence, direction, and meaning over time. Every step forward in growth is built on a foundation of truth. Without it, discipline collapses into performance, confidence turns into arrogance, and ambition becomes fantasy. With it, even small efforts compound into real change. If you want to become someone formidable, someone capable of handling responsibility, pressure, and purpose, then you must commit to truth as your starting point. Not occasional truth, not partial truth. Relentless, uncompromising honesty with yourself. Because the truth is this: you cannot transform what you refuse to face. And once you face it fully, courageously, without excuses, you discover that truth, while painful at first, is the most powerful ally you will ever have on the path to becoming who you are capable of being. Discipline is self-respect in action. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, punishment, or an external force imposed on an unwilling life. But in truth, discipline is something far deeper and far more personal. It is self-respect made visible through consistent action. When you are disciplined, you are not obeying someone else's rules. You are honoring a commitment to your future self. You are declaring through behavior rather than words that your life has value, that your time matters, and that your potential is worth protecting. Where there is no discipline, there is usually not freedom, but chaos, disorganized thoughts, fractured habits, emotional instability, and a quiet erosion of confidence that no amount of motivation can repair. Self-respect cannot survive without discipline. You cannot repeatedly betray your own standards and still like the person you see in the mirror. Every promise you break to yourself, every plan abandoned, every responsibility avoided, every comfort chosen over effort weakens your internal sense of trust. And when you stop trusting yourself, life becomes unstable. Anxiety grows, confidence collapses, and decision-making becomes reactive instead of deliberate. Discipline restores that trust. It proves day by day that your word has weight, even when no one else is watching. The absence of discipline does not feel dramatic at first. It feels soft, comfortable, harmless. Skipping one workout, delaying one task, indulging one distraction seems insignificant in isolation. But life is not built in isolation. It is built in patterns. What you repeat becomes who you are. Undisciplined lives do not fall apart overnight. They decay slowly, hidden beneath excuses, indie rationalizations, until one day the consequences become unavoidable. Discipline interrupts that decay. It draws a clear line between what is easy now and what is necessary for the future. Discipline is also what separates desire from achievement. Everyone wants to improve. Everyone wants success, respect, stability, and meaning. But wanting costs nothing. Discipline costs effort, discomfort, and sacrifice. It requires you to act in alignment with your goals even when motivation disappears. And motivation always disappears. It is unreliable, emotional, and short-lived. Discipline, on the other hand, is structural. It carries you forward when emotion fails. It is the system that sustains growth long after enthusiasm fades. There is dignity in discipline. A disciplined person does not need constant validation because their confidence is rooted in competence. They know they can rely on themselves. They know they will show up, do the work, and endure discomfort without collapsing. That knowledge creates quiet strength. It changes how you walk, how you speak, and how you handle pressure. Discipline does not make life easier. It makes you stronger. And that difference is everything. Many people resist discipline because they mistake it for rigidity. But true discipline is not about control for its own sake. It is about direction. It frees you from the tyranny of impulse and short-term emotion. Without discipline, your life is governed by whatever you feel in the moment: fatigue, fear, boredom, desire. With discipline, you choose your actions based on long-term values rather than temporary states. That choice is the foundation of maturity. It is what allows a person to build a life rather than merely react to one. Discipline also protects you from self-deception. It exposes excuses as what they are, attempts to escape responsibility without admitting fear or weakness. When you are disciplined, you do not negotiate with your lower impulses. You do not wait to feel ready. Why? Act because the action is required. And over time, this repeated alignment between intention and behavior reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. There is also a moral component to discipline that is often ignored. When you are undisciplined, you push the consequences of your choices onto others, your family, your colleagues, your future self. When you are disciplined, you carry your share of the weight. You become reliable, dependable, solid. In a world increasingly defined by irresponsibility and blame, discipline is an act of quiet leadership. It demonstrates that strength is possible without cruelty and order without oppression. Discipline requires sacrifice, but not in the way most people imagine. It does not require you to give up joy. It requires you to give up self-destruction disguised as pleasure. Many comforts are not truly comforting. They numb rather than nourish. Discipline removes these false comforts and replaces them with earned satisfaction. The satisfaction that comes from keeping your word, improving your capacity, and moving steadily toward a meaningful aim is deeper and more durable than any instant gratification. It is important to understand that discipline is built, not discovered. You do not wake up one day as a disciplined person. You construct discipline through small, repeatable actions that are slightly uncomfortable but sustainable. You start by organizing what is immediately around you. Your time, your space, your routines. Order on a small scale teaches you that change is possible. And once you experience that, momentum begins to build. Discipline compounds. Each small victory strengthens your belief in your ability to govern yourself. Without discipline, suffering is random and destructive. With discipline, suffering becomes structured and purposeful. You choose your difficulty instead of being crushed by it. You choose effort now so you are not forced into desperation later. This voluntary acceptance of hardship is what transforms discipline from mere habit into character. Character is what remains when motivation fails and circumstances turn against you. Discipline also sharpens perception. When you live in a disciplined way, you become more aware of how your actions affect your outcomes. You stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something shaped by you. That shift in perspective is liberating. It replaces helplessness with agency and confusion with clarity. Discipline does not remove uncertainty, but it gives you a stable center from which to face it. To live without discipline is to live at the mercy of your weakest impulses. To live with discipline is to align your actions with your highest values. This alignment is the essence of self-respect. You cannot think your way into respecting yourself. You must act your way there. Each disciplined choice, no matter how small, is a declaration: I matter. My food sure matters, and I will not abandon myself for comfort. In the end, discipline is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming reliable. Reliable to yourself, to others, and to the responsibilities life places in your path. It is the quiet force that transforms potential into reality and intention into achievement. When discipline becomes part of who you are, life stops feeling chaotic and starts feeling directed. You know where you are going, and more importantly, you know you have the strength to get there. Discipline is self-respect in action. And without self-respect, no success, no recognition, and no comfort will ever be enough. Voluntary hardship builds meaning. There is an unavoidable truth about human existence that many try desperately to escape. Suffering is inevitable. No strategy, no amount of comfort, no level of success can permanently shield you from pain, loss, uncertainty, or struggle. The only real choice you are given is not whether you will suffer, but how you will suffer, and whether that suffering will destroy you or strengthen you. This is where voluntary hardship enters the picture. Voluntary hardship is the conscious decision to accept difficulty now so that life does not break you later. It is the act of choosing a meaningful burden rather than waiting for a meaningless one to be imposed upon you. Most people attempt to design their lives around avoiding discomfort. They chase ease, pleasure, and convenience, believing that a painless life is a good life. But comfort, when pursued as the highest value, does not protect you. It weakens you. It makes you fragile. A life structured entirely around avoiding hardship produces a person who cannot endure even small challenges without anxiety, resentment, or collapse. When difficulty inevitably arrives, as it always does, such a person is unprepared and overwhelmed. Avoided suffering does not disappear. It accumulates, gaining weight and force until it demands payment with interest. Voluntary hardship works differently. When you willingly choose something difficult, discipline, responsibility, effort, restraint. You are training yourself to carry weight. You are expanding your capacity to endure stress without breaking. This does not make life painless, but it makes it manageable. You stop being shocked by difficulty because you have already practiced meeting resistance head on. In this way, voluntary hardship is not self-punishment, it is self-protection. It is how you prepare yourself for a world that will not bend to your preferences. Meaning emerges precisely at the intersection of responsibility and suffering. A life without challenge feels empty because there is nothing at stake. No struggle means no growth means no progress, and no progress slowly erodes the sense that your life matters. Voluntary hardship gives life texture and direction. When you choose a burden worthy of your effort, building competence, mastering a skill, caring for others, pursuing truth, what? Transforms suffering from a curse into a vehicle for purpose. The pain no longer feels random, it becomes part of a larger narrative you can endure. This is why people who voluntarily take on difficult responsibilities often report feeling more fulfilled, not less. They are tired, yes, but they are not lost. They are stressed, but not empty. They wake up knowing why they must endure the day. Contrast this with those who avoid responsibility. They may be physically comfortable, but they are often psychologically restless, anxious, and dissatisfied. Their suffering lacks meaning, so it becomes intolerable. Comfort without purpose eventually turns into despair. Voluntary hardship also restores a sense of agency. When suffering is forced upon you, it feels humiliating and disempowering. But when you choose hardship deliberately, it strengthens your sense of control. You are no longer merely reacting to life, you are shaping it. This sense of agency is deeply stabilizing. It reminds you that while you cannot control everything that happens, you can control how you prepare and how you respond. That knowledge alone reduces fear and resentment. There is a deep psychological transformation that occurs when you willingly do what is difficult. You begin to see yourself differently. You stop identifying as someone who avoids pain and start identifying as someone who can endure it. That identity shift changes everything. Fear loses its grip. Challenges become invitations rather than threats. You begin to trust yourself, not because life is easy, but because you know you are strong enough to face what comes. That self-trust is one of the rarest and most valuable forms of confidence. Voluntary hardship also disciplines desire. Many of our problems arise not from external forces, but from uncontrolled impulses, overconsumption, distraction, indulgence, and avoidance. When you voluntarily impose limits on yourself, you reclaim authority over your own behavior. You prove that you are a slave to impulse or emotion. This self-mastery creates inner order, and inner order is essential for meaning. A chaotic inner world cannot sustain a meaningful outer life. It is important to understand that voluntary hardship does not mean reckless suffering or needless self-denial. It is not about seeking pain for its own sake. It is about choosing challenges that build strength, character, and competence. There is a crucial difference between destructive suffering and constructive suffering. Destructive suffering breaks you down without teaching you anything. Constructive suffering teaches you who you are, what you can endure, and how to improve. Wisdom lies in choosing the latter. When people refuse voluntary hardship, life eventually assigns them compulsory hardship. Health deteriorates when discipline is avoided. Relationships crumble when responsibility is neglected. Careers stagnate when effort is postponed. Meaning collapses when truth is ignored. These forms of suffering are far more painful because they arrive unexpectedly and without purpose. They feel like punishment rather than challenge. Voluntary hardship, by contrast, feels difficult but dignified. You suffer, but you suffer with your head held high, knowing why. There is also a moral strength that develops through chosen difficulty. When you regularly choose what is hard but right, your character solidifies. You become less easily corrupted by convenience or pressure. You develop the ability to stand firm when others collapse or compromise in times of crisis. People instinctively look for those who have practiced carrying weight. Voluntary hardship prepares you to be that person, not through bravado, but through quiet resilience. Meaning is not something you stumble upon accidentally. It is forged through repeated confrontation with difficulty in pursuit of something valuable. Every meaningful life story contains struggle, not because suffering is noble in itself, but because overcoming it reveals purpose. Voluntary hardship allows you to author that story consciously rather than becoming a passive character in someone else's narrative. You choose the mountain you are willing to climb instead of being crushed in the valley of avoidance. Over time, voluntary hardship reshapes your relationship with pain. Pain becomes information rather than enemy. It tells you where you are weak, where you must adapt, where growth is required. Instead of fleeing discomfort, you learn to listen to it. This does not make you cruel or rigid. It makes you wise. You stop demanding that life be easy and start demanding that it be meaningful. That shift changes everything. Perhaps most importantly, voluntary hardship gives you a reason to respect yourself. Self-respect is not built on comfort or praise. It is built on endurance and integrity. When you know that you can do what is necessary, even when it is unpleasant, you no longer feel small in the face of life. You feel grounded, capable, alive. That feeling cannot be purchased or granted by others. It must be earned through effort. In the end, voluntary hardship is the price of meaning. You pay it daily through discipline, responsibility, restraint, and effort. The alternative is not ease, but emptiness. Life will test you regardless of your choices. The only question is whether you will meet those tests prepared or unprepared, strengthened or weakened, purposeful or bitter. Choose hardship that builds you. Choose challenges that stretch you. Choose suffering that means something. Because a life without voluntary hardship is not a life free from pain. It is a life stripped of meaning. Aim upward, one day at a time. Aiming upward is not a poetic idea or a motivational slogan. It is a practical necessity for anyone who does not want their life to slowly collapse into chaos. Human beings are not neutral creatures. If you do not aim at something higher than your current state, you do not remain where you are. You drift downward. Entropy takes over. Habits decay, standards erode, and meaning dissolves. To aim upward is to recognize that your life requires direction. And that direction must be chosen consciously, deliberately, and renewed daily. Without an aim, suffering becomes unbearable because it has no context. With an aim, even suffering can be endured because it is serving something greater. An upward aim does not require grandiosity. It does not demand that you know exactly where you will be in 10 or 20 years. In fact, such certainty is often an illusion. What is required instead is orientation, a commitment to move in the right direction, even if the destination is still unclear. Aiming upward means choosing what improves you rather than what weakens you, what clarifies rather than what confuses, what builds rather than what numbs. It is not about perfection, it is about trajectory. The direction you are moving matters far more than your current position. Many people become paralyzed because they believe they must transform their entire lives at once. This is a mistake. Radical overnight change is rare and often unsustainable. Growth that lasts is incremental, built through small, disciplined actions repeated consistently over time. Aiming upward one day at a time respects the reality of human limitation while still demanding responsibility. You ask yourself a simple but powerful question: what is the smallest meaningful improvement I can make today? When that question is answered honestly and acted upon, momentum begins to form. Daily upward aim counters despair. Despair thrives in vagueness and overwhelms those who see their problems as infinite and unsolvable. But when you narrow your focus to what can be improved today, one habit, one conversation, one task, life becomes manageable again. You stop being crushed by the weight of the future and start engaging with the present. This is not avoidance, it is precision. You deal with reality at a scale where action is possible, an upward AI. M also disciplines perception. When you know what you are aiming at, decisions become clearer. You no longer waste energy constantly debating what to do because your aim acts as a filter. Some choices move you closer to your goal, others pull you away. This clarity reduces anxiety. Much of human anxiety does not come from effort, but from confusion. Too many options, too little direction. A clear aim simplifies life by organizing priorities. Aiming upward also requires humility. You must accept that you are not yet what you could be, and that improvement is necessary. This acceptance is not self-hatred, it is self-respect. It says, I am valuable enough to be developed. People who refuse to aim upward often disguise their stagnation as contentment. But beneath that surface is usually fear. Fear of failure, fear of effort, fear of discovering their own limitations. An upward aim confronts that fear directly and replaces it with purpose. Consistency is more important than intensity. Aiming upward one day at a time means showing up even when progress feels invisible. It means acting in alignment with your values even when results are slow. This patience is crucial because real change compounds quietly. Most transformations are not dramatic, they are gradual. But gradual does not mean insignificant. Over months and years, small disciplined actions reshape identity, character, and destiny. An upward aim also guards against resentment. When people feel stuck, they often become bitter toward others who are progressing, toward systems they believe are unfair, toward life itself. But resentment thrives when responsibility is abandoned. When you aim upward, and modestly, resentment loses its fuel. You may still face injustice or difficulty, but you are no longer psychologically trapped by it. Your energy is directed toward improvement rather than blame. To aim upward is also to take responsibility for your future self. The person you will be in 5 or 10 years is being shaped right now by your daily choices. Every action is a message sent forward in time. Neglect today becomes regret tomorrow. Discipline today becomes stability tomorrow. When you understand this, procrastination becomes harder to justify. You realize that every day matters, not in a dramatic way, but in a cumulative one. An upward aim must be grounded in values, not ego. If you aim only at status, validation, or comparison, your progress will feel hollow and fragile. Someone will always be ahead of you, and external success without internal alignment eventually collapses. Aiming upward means aligning your actions with what you believe is meaningful. Truth, responsibility, competence, service, integrity. When your aim is value-based, progress strengthens you rather than inflating you. There will be days when your aim feels distant and your effort feels pointless. This is inevitable. On such days, aiming upward does not mean heroic action. It means not betraying yourself. It means doing what is necessary, not what is impressive. It means maintaining standards even when enthusiasm disappears. This quiet persistence is what separates people who build meaningful lives from those who merely dream about them. Aiming upward one day at a time also prepares you for catastrophe. Life will deliver unexpected blows, loss, failure, illness, betrayal. When that happens, the person who has been living without aim collapses because there is nothing holding them together. The person who has been aiming upward, however imperfectly, has structure. They have habits, values, and inner order to fall back on. That structure does not eliminate pain, but it prevents disintegratio. There is also hope embedded in upward aim. Hope is not wishful thinking, it is the belief that your actions matter. When you aim upward, you act as if improvement is possible, and that belief becomes self-fulfilling. Each small success reinforces the idea that effort produces results. Over time, hope becomes grounded, realistic, and resilient. It is no longer dependent on circumstances because it is rooted in agency. Ultimately, aiming upward is an act of faith, not blind faith, but disciplined faith in the idea that responsibility leads to meaning. You do not need to see the entire path to take the next step. You only need to know the direction. Upward does not mean easy. It means worthwhile. It means choosing growth over comfort, truth over illusion, discipline over impulse. A life aimed upward is not free from suffering, but it is free from despair. It may be demanding, but it is not empty. When you aim upward one day at a time, you transform chaos into order, potential into reality, and effort into meaning. You become someone who can stand upright in the face of difficulty, not because life is kind, but because you have chosen a direction worthy of your strength. Aim upward, not someday, not perfectly, but today, and then do it again tomorrow.